Hey everyone, I'd like to start off by saying I'm sorry, because if you're watching this, you're probably about to attempt to make the most annoying thing ever designed. And I think we had that same thought when we all first saw Camilla. We were just in love with everything about her, but then you just look down and you see the hip claws and you're just like, no. And while making these is not an exact science, I'm going to do my best to show you guys what I did to bring these things into the world. And just so you know, if you make these, you're officially joining the Suffer Squad, like there's no question. I should make like certificates or something. I'd also like to add, if you ever use my tutorials or make something based off of one of my videos, please, please, please find a way to tag me and show me the picture, because I've already had a couple of you show me the results of using some of my tutorials and it is the coolest thing in the world. So please show me, because it's so exciting. It's just the coolest thing in the world. Alright, that's enough stalling. Let's get into it. So I started off by measuring how long I wanted my hip claws to be from where it started at my hip to where it ended on my leg. Once I had that measured out, I drew a basic flat sketch of the hip claws just so I can get an idea of how it would look on my body. After that first basic sketch of the hip claws, I just cut it out and then held it up to my hip to see if it was laying the way I wanted it to. This is the point where you're going to do a lot of editing. You could see the little 3 talons that I had needed to be closer together and some things needed to be bigger and smaller. You just really need to keep going back and changing it, going back and changing it. One of the very few good parts about the hip claws is that every single section of it is segmented. So I decided to take advantage of the way that that's designed and make every single piece that you see on Camilla's design into a separate piece on my cosplay. So I started doing that by looking at the shapes that individually made up each of the little talons. There's a top and a bottom section to each of the talons, and you need to duplicate each of them in order to create that 3D shape. So I started off just by using the sketch that I had already made and translating it into a 3D object. But I found out pretty quickly that they were way too small. So instead I just looked at my reference photos really closely and I tried to break down each shape that is making up the hip claws, specifically starting with the talons. So there's 2 different pointed, jagged shapes that are making up each talon that we're going to duplicate twice to make up each of the talons. I just kept remaking these and making them larger or smaller or skinnier or more curved, anywhere they needed to be in order to give you that like hooked look that we're looking for. Just keep looking back and forth between your reference photo and what you're drawing, and then modify it slightly more and more until it's more refined and closer to what the picture looks like. Once I was happy with the talon shapes, then I used masking tape to fill in the gaps and make the top part of the hip claw. Just really take your time refining and drawing these shapes, looking back and forth between the reference photo and what you're doing. That's honestly like the key to success, is just constantly looking at the reference photos and then looking at what you're doing and making sure that the proportions of what's happening on Camilla is what's happening on you. Once I was finally happy with my pattern, then I cut each piece of the pattern out individually and then cut it out in EVA foam. Make sure you're using like a thicker, sturdier EVA foam. You don't want to use like 6mm or like something really flimsy or floppy. You need it to be thicker so it looks like sturdy metal. I believe the foam I ended up using was 3/8 of an inch. I'll put it on the screen if it was something else. But you want to use that thicker foam so it looks like actual metal. And you can find this type of foam at a lot of different hardware stores. Try looking up like floor mats, like you can find it at like Home Depot, Lowe's, and I find mine at like a local hardware store for way cheap. So this is definitely really accessible. You don't even need to get it online if you don't want. You're also gonna wanna make sure you cut all these pieces out on a bevel. You'll remember this if you watched my Camilla axe video. Basically, you wanna make sure you angle your blade in towards the pattern piece that you're cutting out, and that's going to create an angle on the thick foam. That way all of our pieces can lock together with as little foam in between. Instead of two blocky pieces that are cut just like squares sitting next to each other, they're going to be at an angle so that they can fit in together. And I actually decided to take that a step further. I had a shaver tool which allowed me to make my bevel even deeper than my blade was able to cut. And then you're going to carefully glue all your pieces together with contact cement. This is a really, really strong adhesive and it'll make sure everything stays together. Before you paint your hip claws, be sure to seal them with something. I use Plasti-Dip, and it's just basically like a plastic rubber coating, which allows the paint to not soak into the foam. It makes it look nice and shiny, and that is going to sell that this thing is metal. And actually, before I painted them, I realized my hip claws were a little heavy, so when I was holding them up to my hip, all the little talons were collapsing together and meeting at the bottom, and that's not what I wanted. So this may or may not be a problem that you have, but in order to fix it, you're going to run wire up and down each of the talons, and I curved it at the top so that way they know to bow out. And that way I had more control over where the little talons were pointing instead of having them just slump together. And now we need to hide the edges on the inside of the hip claws, and in order to do that I just patterned it out with masking tape, and then I used 2mm foam to glue on the inside. This is going to sell it as like a fully formed metal object, and that way people aren't seeing the they're not seeing behind the curtain of what it takes to make a cosplay. Like, you don't want people to be able to figure out what you did to make it, and this is hiding that. Unless you're me and you're making a tutorial on how you made it. And you guys better be thankful that I figured out how to attach these stupid things. Suffer Squad President over here. Nice to meet you. So you have to make yourself like a waist garter belt sort of thing. I took elastic and then I measured it around my waist so that it would fit comfortably but still snugly. And then I attached 4 other elastic straps to that waistband that are going to run down my side and meet where the hip claws are going to be. So basically this belt is gonna run underneath the corset and then meet up with where the hip claws are, peeking out with a couple buckles to clip in. And I would say don't attach the buckles onto the hip claws or onto the elastic belt until you know exactly where they're gonna line up. And you're not gonna know exactly where they line up until you make the corset. So be sure you try on your corset while you're attaching the hip claws, because you don't want any of those straps to be visible. You want it to meet up exactly with where the corset ends. That way no one even knows how you attached them. So you can go ahead and make the hip claws in their entirety, but just don't fully attach them until you have the corset to try that on with. That's it. You did it. You survived. You're officially a Suffer Squad member and you have created the most annoying thing to ever exist. Follow my Instagram if you're interested in seeing more cosplay pictures and other junk that I do. And subscribe. We just hit 2K and I'm like blown away. Like I still can't believe that that many people care about what the hell I'm doing. Thank you guys for watching. Leave any suggestions for future videos or any questions you have about this one. I love seeing your guys' comments. You can comment literally anything, and anytime I get a comment, I get so excited. I do have 2 more Camilla tutorials left after this, and that is for the gauntlets and the armbands and the boots. So let me know if there's one or another that is more in demand for you guys. And I unfortunately don't have a video filmed for the crown pieces and any of the fabric stuff like the cape and the leggings and the leg veils. So if you guys want to know how I made those, and if there's enough people who are interested in seeing that, I will definitely do a video explaining how I did it. I just don't have video clips of how I made them because it was a trip. Alright, thank you guys for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Right here, you can get